What shall we take today as a topic for talking? Perhaps instead of dealing with some typical Buddhist areas or topics or practices, let's stay today in a very general kind of reflections about spirituality in general. Why people are involved in that practices and study and sometimes very intensive involvement. What is behind that? And not to go in any particular type of religion or spirituality. As the first thing, memory comes. This is a quote of quite a famous author, a writer, author of some theater plays as well. And he said something which goes into a life experience. Good writers have usually also some philosophical bent. They bring it as an undertone into their books or theater plays, some deeper life experience. And this quote goes like that. He said, "The small troubles in life, they ruin us. But the big troubles in life, they return us to the truth." The big troubles, they reconnect us back with the truth of life, of existence, with the deeper truth of existence. I would take it as an entry into spirituality in general. And in one of the last talks, I was using this graph of Upanisa Sutta. We can see it again. This crucial moment when we come out of this cycle of living, paticca samuppada, when comes the first kind of idea or intuition that there is something more than that. And it is this crucial point. And if we look what Buddha is suggesting, what can trigger this idea of coming out of this meaningless circling into superficial living from day to day, from life to life. The term is dukkha, the big trouble, which can have the power to reconnect us with the deeper truth behind the surface of a superficial living. So I would take it as a gate into today's reflection, starting to distinguish the glittery surface of ordinary living, comparing it, this is an old kind of a parable. The horizontal living and the vertical spiritual aspiration to find some deeper meaning behind it all. Horizontal and vertical. Worldly and spiritual. This is an old parable which sometimes is helpful to see the difference. What are the general qualities of the horizontal, of the worldly involvements? What comes as the first feature is ego. This self-centeredness, viewing everything from very particular self-perspective, self-oriented perspective, looking just for things which brings some kind of pleasure to the egocentric, self-centered interests of the life. Money, riches, importance, influence, to have, to be important, to be loved. And also the opposites of that. To fail, to be poor, to be insignificant, to go into depression. This is just the other side of the ego qualities, which of course, there is just a second side to everything. The ego would be running just for the glittery side of everything, trying to repress or not see, not experience, to avoid the inevitable backside of everything. So we have already the second general qualities of this horizontal living, which means dualities. Everything is dual, pleasant, unpleasant, fame and bad reputation, gain and loss. The famous Lokadhamma in Buddha's teaching, which are expressing exactly the ephemeral quality of the happiness of the horizontal living, worldly, superficial living. To have sensual pleasures, to force through one's own opinion, that's one of the major qualities of the ego. This power, putting one's own importance over the value of the others. Generally speaking, ego values dualities, time, subjugations to time, yesterday, today, tomorrow, being very concerned about the time flow. And perhaps the last one, which I would put as emblematic for this worldly living, is enormous importance for thoughts and thinking, concepts in the mind, remembering and planning. Usually being out of sync with the present moment. There is always influence from the past and kind of projections into the future. So these are the typical qualities and values of horizontal living, the ordinary living. What are the qualities of the spiritual scale of values? It's clear that even the good quality horizontal life have already some of these spiritual qualities in itself. And there is intuitive inclination toward it, at least a little bit. Like deeper understanding, which is a factor of wisdom. To understand the things deeper, to be able to put oneself into another people's position. That's already a factor of wisdom. And it is clearly the quality of this vertical development, spiritual development. This is a very important gate towards many spiritual qualities, to open up this self-confinement in one's own particular perspective of a viewing, to opening it into that another people may have a different kind of abilities, and they see the things from their own perspective, first of all. So wisdom and deeper understanding is the ability to see the things from different perspectives at the same time. To see, let's say, the glittery side and the backside of everything at the same time. And this is the first kind of tendency to liberate oneself from the time flow, which already give some importance to the life experience. It is the life experience which is building up the wisdom. Wise people, whom we call a wise person. Somebody who has life experience. Who knows, it is like this, but after a while, it's usually turning into that. So the qualities of wisdom, not to jump off pleasant experiences so high, and not to go so deep into depressive experiences after a while, when one side turns into the other side. That's the quality of wisdom. What it brings with itself is tolerance, and that's another quality of the vertical values. To be tolerant towards another views and other people's behaviors, kind of a pacifying ability in the mind, tolerance. Forgiveness. Also, the best source for forgiveness comes from wisdom. Looking at so many mistakes in my own life brings the idea that the other people are the same. They make their mistakes and one-sidedness, sometimes so obsessed with one's particular perspective on things. Only this is the real, should be like that. This is the ego voice. It should be like this. And the wisdom opens the gate. It could be also different, many ways different. So the wisdom is really one of the major qualities in Buddhism, and also in enlightened way of living. The wisdom starts to have bigger and bigger function and dominance. But it should be always balanced with faith and trust, because too much relying on pure wisdom can bring any kind of disbalance, actually. One-sidedness, even in the spiritual area, is bringing a disbalance and some kind of unhealthy development. So even too much of deep understanding, to having excuse for everything, one-sidedness from this side, that's not good either. So the balance is in Buddhist teachings always from the side of faith and trust. Trust into higher, even higher, the things which are beyond, even far, far beyond of rational approach to the life. And these are the forces of intuition. To be clear and open towards this very important source of joy and strength coming from the side of intuition. So wisdom and intuition and trust should be always in balance. And these both are definitely these vertical spiritual values, and the more we can bring of these spiritual values into our horizontal life, the better. So that in the end, actually, instead of splitting the existence once of a living into purely daily living and then into some religious or spiritual hours of our life, when some people go into church in the Sunday or sit down for 40 minutes of meditation every day, kind of a division into two sides of one's own living, and bringing these things together, like ideal case 45 degrees, not horizontal, not purely vertical, but bringing these things into one enlightened kind of living. But there is more of these spiritual values to reflect upon. So we had wisdom, forbearance, tolerance, forgiveness, loving kindness, which comes and opens when we open this purely egoistic way of looking and living into joy of open heart, connecting with others, sending loving thoughts, wishing well-being to oneself and to everybody else, not making big difference between myself and anybody other. That's the base for loving kindness. Seeing the commonalities. Compassion, connecting with the unhappiness of other beings, not only people, opening the heart. Why do we doing it? Because somewhere deep down it nurtures our heart. Even that, having some thought for the people and beings who are in suffering. The aim is not to suffer with them. That wouldn't help anybody to slide down into the suffering of others, but connecting with the suffering of others, wishing their release. That would be the ideal Buddhist way of compassion. There are another languages which are distinguishing very clearly between going to suffer with others or kind of a wishing relief. These are two different things. To suffer with, you are bringing your down. Actually, in the active help to suffering people may connect us really with the difficulties in one's own life. This would be still full in the range of compassion. But as I said, it is not the aim to ruin one's own life because of so much suffering around. It should actually connect us with beautiful spiritual qualities and inner riches. It is a kind of enrichment to come out of one's own interests and dedicate kind of one's own pleasure. I could go into the theater, but I give the money to somebody on the street who evidently suffers, perhaps even hunger. So this kind of compassion is wonderful. Usually giving the picture of Kuan Yin, this Avalokiteshvara in Tibetan Buddhism, or in Mahayana generally, symbol of compassion. Kuan Yin statues are extremely expression of the inner peace and balance, equanimity. And this is the symbol of Buddhist compassion. Peace and connectedness. So balancing the compassion with mudita, which is the ability to connect in a similar way with all the joy of the whole universe. Beautiful quality, typical spiritual quality. When we come out of our confinement, connecting with the whole scale of existence, the suffering and the joy, and the enormousness of the suffering, enormousness of the joy in the whole universe, whole samsara. Typical spiritual values, but more of them. Equanimity, to complete the 4 Brahma Viharas in Buddhist best states of mind. You know, the crown is equanimity, emotional equanimity. But more, inclination towards harmony, clear vertical spiritual value, inclination towards truth and authenticity. Another very important spiritual quality is contentment with that what we have, and being able to acknowledge it and to celebrate it. This is a direct contrast and difference towards the horizontal, never enough. The ego has never enough. And contentment is a beautiful spiritual value which kind of makes it possible to look around, celebrating all that what already exists, the good which is already in oneself, in the other people. Gratitude, thankfulness for all what we have. Thankfulness towards oneself, thankful to the others, toward the others. Another spiritual quality, non-greed, not be greedy, detachment. Renunciation goes a little bit too much into the monastic area, but restraint, healthy restraint, which altogether can be grouped into the direction of mental purity, quite as central things in this spiritual vertical development and aspirations. So what is so emblematic again for the vertical? We have the wisdom, which was very important, trust and faith, contentment, but also escaping the confinement into the time flow, that the wisdom is actually bridging this splitted flow of time, seeing the things more or less in a time general area, and perhaps the highest attainments in spirituality go really beyond the time. Concept also, if the horizontal life is so much obsessed with thinking, thoughts, concept, and so, the spiritual development is using wholesome thinking to get the directions, but let's be clear that all the higher stages on the spiritual unfolding are beyond concept, beyond thoughts. So that also, and similarly, the dualities so dominant in the horizontal living are becoming more and more relative, kind of just a side of the same thing, which in Zen is coming so clearly into suchness. Everything is just as it is. The dualities coming together, such. Not valuating too much one side over the others. But it is only in the highest areas of spiritualities where the wholesome and unwholesome is coming together. That already very high up. Let's be clear that this is also the area The karma works in the area of pleasant, unpleasant, happiness and pain, wholesome, unwholesome, but when when the pleasure and pain is just one and the same thing, such, that's also the end of karma. But, these are already the very, very high spiritual areas. And I wanted to stay in a general field. So let us round up today's reflections. As I said, the aim would be actually to heal the split between purely worldly and purely idealistically spiritual, because that is a catch as well. It can end up in a kind of an unhealthy, over-idealistic way, not being ready really for it, trying to get to the highest spiritual qualities, neglecting the realities of our physical reality. Not good. We can get a very hard lesson from that. And really, it is not, certainly not in the Buddhist ideals, to fly up just into some extremely refined areas of consciousness. As a meditation, okay, jhanic absorption, fine, but not losing the perspective also of the area of existence we are now in. That means the worldly life. If somebody is rather for the family life and job and like that, so not forgetting that the real satisfaction and kind of a fullness of the nurtured heart comes from the spiritual qualities and values. Eliminating the gap between horizontal and vertical. And this is also the taste of the real Buddhist realizations, that they are coming out of the split and leading a meaningful life, as long as we have it. So this is the reflections. These are the reflections for today.